when you go over the Bob Lazar story, like what are you? How much of you cries bullshit? How much of you's like,
I'm more on the side. I think he's the most credible whistleblower because he
didn't profit from it.
And they prosecuted him for running a prostitution ring,
Which maybe he was.
Which I think he was. He pled down to pandering, but
they also raided him during the Jeremy Corbell documentary. While they're filming the documentary, the FBI raided his facility, and they said they were looking for something, and supposedly he has a version or a sample of stable element 115.
What?
That's supposedly. Yeah, and that's supposedly what they were looking for.
Well, of course.
Supposedly he had gotten that from the lab, and when he was at S4, and that he had managed to smuggle out a stable chunk of this element 115. And there was a video that George Knapp had from back in the 80s where Lazar was demonstrating how this stuff bends light and, what it does, like it has weird effects.
How soon after that raid was 115 is now called Moscovium? How soon after that raid was 115 synthesized? I think it was synthesized in Russia.
Synthesized by a particle collider, and so the when they got it is a very temporary, quickly dissolving form, but they proved its existence. And supposedly, what Lazar is saying, wherever these beings are from, they obviously have a completely different environment, and they have a stable version of this element.
Yep.
And this element is crucial to this gravity propulsion system.
Yes.
That it's a part of this reactor, it gets bombarded with radiation, produces this gravity field, allows you to just slingshot through the universe.
I don't know. Are they working to stabilize it? I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, man.
Why would they raid Bob Lazar?
That's that spectrum of believability again.
But that's what's so interesting and fun and also frustrating about the subject.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like the majority of your videos. It's like, I don't know. I don't know what to think. I don't know who's full of shit. I don't know how much. I mean, I was watching the Townsend Brown one today, and you were talking about John Lear and John Lear's connection to Bob Lazar and the possibility that Lear was spreading disinformation.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I've, by the way, since making that video, I've become more positive on Lazar, just insofar as I think he was at S4 Area 51. And there's going to be a great documentary coming out by my buddy Luigi on this called Project Gravatar. And I think there's going to be a lot of corroborating evidence that he was at least there, and a lot in his story checks. But I think you have to view, and I even say that in this video, that I think a lot of the story could be true. You can't, I think, view the Bob Lazar story. You can't just take it at face value because John Lear and he were friends. John Lear is this babbling UFO nut. He's obsessed with UFOs. He's writing weird, like, disinfo-y style stuff with Bill Cooper, Behold the Pale Horse guy.
Which is a wild book.
Yeah. And so he's crazy.
Doesn't he talk about bases on the moon?
He talks about bases on the moon. Lear also talked about a soul catcher that controlled our souls on the moon.
Oh boy.
And so Lear was flooding the zone with all sorts of weird shit. Lear comes from an interesting family.
Right.
His father is Bill Lear, who's the autopilot wizard. He created the first business, basically the first private jet, the Lear jet, in the 50s and 60s, and was an associate of a guy I hope we talk about named Thomas Townsend Brown.
Yeah.
And so I think, Lear was engaging in all sorts of bullshit. Was he a useful idiot, or was he a sophisticated agent provocateur? I'm totally open to him having been a useful idiot. In fact, there is a video of him saying, I was told, I was given all the Bob Lazar files or whatever, and I was told about, to actually, he said a guy named Admiral McClellan knew that I ran my mouth. I even have this video actually on the doc that I sent you, Jamie. He says, knew that I ran my mouth. So that's why we got Bob a job or whatever. And we knew that part of this stuff would leak. And it was like this limited hangout strategy on behalf of this guy named Admiral McClellan or whatever. And he was this useful idiot to sort of get it out. And I think
For what purpose?
Recruiting. You give people high level. Yeah.
Here, hear it here.
And the MJ personnel the original 12 have all passed away. So they get different people into these positions of MJ 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and taken over. It's degraded, so it's almost political now instead of like it was when Truman originally formed the MJ-12. It turns out that MJ-1, the head of MJ-12, is a guy named Admiral Mike McClellan. He wanted to get some of the information out because he didn't want to. He thought that some of this information should be out in the public. We don't need to keep all this secrecy. So he decided trying to figure out a way to get it to the public. So he knew that I was a blabbermouth and I would tell anything I knew. They investigated Bob Lazar and they knew that he was a genius, but that he had a background such that they could instantly discredit him. They removed all his records from MIT, from Caltech, so he couldn't prove anything. He'd go back to Cal, no, I don't see any records here. And, well, I was here. Well, no, you weren't. And he also, up in Reno at one time, he ran a cat house there. I forget what the name of the Honeysuckle Ranch it was. So they chose him because not only could he probably help them because he was so smart, and as matter of fact, he's the one that named an unpennium 115. He's the one that told them what that was, and they didn't know when he went there. They didn't know what it was. He was the one that told them that's element 115, and then told them why and how he'd figured it out. But they decided to pick on Bob to go up there to work at S4. Because they knew that Bob would tell me instantly, and that I would blab the whole thing. And that was their modus operandi, was to get the information out and gauge what it did to the public, how they accepted it, and then pull back and say, oh, no, it was all a mistake. Bob Lazar is a fraud. He never worked here. He doesn't have any credentials like that. And they could back away and get out of it. So that was what Mike McClellan came up with.
Isn't that crazy?
Weird.
And to me,
kind of makes sense a little bit, though.
It does, and that doesn't make Bob Lazar still not the most interesting story in the world. Like he's not saying it didn't happen, right? He's just saying that this happened as part of this limited hangout strategy, where they knew that they could delete the records at MIT. They knew that they could stigmatize him because of the brothel. They knew that he was this not traditionally trained engineer who just happened to strap a ramjet on the back of a Honda or whatever and meet Edward Teller serendipitously. They knew that they had plausible deniability on all of that stuff. There's a great line in the Oppenheimer movie where Leslie Groves, played by Matt Damon, says, "I didn't hire Oppenheimer in spite of his communist sympathies. I hired him because of them." So if you have a top secret program, you want compromise on people. You want to be able to blackmail them. And so I think, that should be taken at face value, in my opinion. And the reason that the story itself can't be taken at face value and needs to be seen through that lens is Lear and Bob Lazar were friends before Bob Lazar got a job at Area 51, S4. And so if you have a top secret program, you're going to do a basic background check. And Lear is going to come up as a guy with a UFO blog, right? And then the CIA is all over the UFO program, right? And he was flying CIA cargo jets. And he says that he disaffiliated in 83. That's bullshit. George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell have talked about how that's BS. And actually he disaffiliated much later into the mid-'80s or whatever. Why would you continue to pay a guy who is leaking your crown jewel secrets?
That's the other thing that Bob said that I thought was really fascinating, was that there was some documentation that they were showing him that claimed that we are the product of accelerated evolution.
He was shown a lot of shit, and he doesn't like talking about it because he doesn't know if it's just total fucking nonsense.
Right.
He is sure that they showed him shit just to see if he'd fucking say crazy shit.
Right, see if he'd talk.
All he cares about is what he saw, what he knows is real. But if you do just talk with him privately, they did show him a photograph of an autopsy of a being with a singular organ. They told him that, the human genome had been altered, just all sorts of crazy shit, and he just has no idea if it's true or if it's.
God, the whole thing is it's so wild. I just wish, if Bob's lying, my God, what a great liar.
Yeah.
He's amazing at it.
Right.
And he's been telling the same lie for 30 plus years. And then there's elements of it that, how would he know that? Like, how would he know about element 115? I mean, element 115, when he was talking about it, was theoretical.
Yeah, he got lucky. He's the luckiest guy I know. He always chooses shit that ends up being fucking right.
I know.
Gravity,
funny.
waves, and how these crap look, man.
Explain the element 115 to people, because people who don't know what we're talking about, that haven't seen the documentary or haven't seen the podcast we did together.
So the way Bob understood it was that he was working on power and propulsion, right? So of one of these, we call them flying saucers, fucking alien vehicle.
That looked like this one.
Exactly.
Right here, from Design by Perry.
Yeah.
The one sitting on the desk.
Even like aerospace people are like, well, if it's the most ingenious thing is the way he described it, powered. People are impressed by it. I'm like, maybe that's just what he saw. But anyway, so the 115 was the power source, he said. And basically, you put it in and it releases antimatter and creates a gravity propulsion, a gravitational field. And then you had three directional emitters. Look, that's how they think these things operate. Traveling faster than the speed of sound with no sonic boom, all transmedium, all domain. These things seem to defy typical propulsion. It's not outside of the realm of what we understand. It's outside of the realm of what we can replicate now. One day we might catch up.
And this element 115 that Bob talked about powering this spaceship was only theoretical back in the late 1980s when he first started discussing it.
Right. We hadn't synthesized it yet.
Right. Well, it wasn't synthesizing. It was created by a particle accelerator, right?
Exactly.
It was detected because it was. I think it was.
But we
like
smashed.
Right.
So we kind of synthesized in that we smashed particles together, and then we're like, oh, for like a second, there it was.
Yeah, I think it's a fraction of a second.
Yeah, and Bob always said that if he's right, if it was 115, that's how he understood it to be. If he's right, then we will someday, be able to make a nominal amount of it that will be stable. That's what he says. You got another one of those?
Yeah, you want one?
Yeah, I'll try one.
All right, here we go.
Thanks, man.
Nice. Yeah, the whole thing is just so interesting, man. It never ends.
Yeah, it never ends. It is interesting. I just
until something actually happens, and my thought is like, when something actually happens, how will people handle it? UFO whistleblower could get immunity under new amendment. So this is what you were talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the thing is I know some of the people doing this, and they're like, they want some nominations, man. Who should talk to them? Well, you got your own fucking logo there.
There you go, buddy.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah, these are Foundation Cigar, JRE cigars. They're good. Shout out to my friend Nick from Foundation Cigars, too. Hooked me up with that cabinet. Got a full humidor up in this bitch now.
Wow. Thank you.
So this element 115.
Yeah.
This is proven by a particle accelerator. And Bob Lazar's claim was that they had a stable amount of this element 115 that had come from this other place. And did they know where this other place was, where this element 115 supposedly had come from? Another planet?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is like what he was told, so he's kind of allergic to, but, he said that the documents said Zeta Reticuli, like, I guess a binary star system or something. That's what were in the documents. Now, if that's true or not, look, remember, he thought it was the U.S. He thought this vehicle was ours.
Right.
And then until he walked inside of it. That's his whole thing. It blew him away. It's hard to buy what someone like Bob is telling you if you don't know the person. You see people in their lives, man.
Like, imagine being him and that actually happening to you, and then you having to go back to reality.
Right.
And tell people or not tell people, just live your life and have the burden of this information, the burden of this thought. Just turn upside down the other way. There you go. Flip the top.
I got to flip the top.
There you go, and then pull
Thank you,
down.
brother.
I mean, the burden of that kind of information, when even discussing it, you seem like such a psycho. You know?
Yeah.
Most people almost instantaneously, other than a real journalist like George Knapp, most people are going to think you're out of your fucking mind.
Yeah. They just dismiss you.
Yeah.
Why would you even do it? Like, what would be your motivation? What would you get out of that?
Well, his motivation was he was seriously worried that they were going to take him out.
Yeah.
Because he knew so much, and they had cut off of his... For folks who don't know the whole story, just give you a brief synopsis. What happened was Bob allegedly was working on back engineering these aircrafts, these vehicles, these spaceships, and in doing so, you have to have a very high level of clearance. Well, with that high level of clearance comes complete government surveillance. So they monitor your phone calls, monitor everything. Turns out Bob's wife was having an affair. So they don't tell Bob that his wife's having an affair, but they cut off his job. They're like, you did too much of a potential to be emotionally unstable. We can't have you working on these top secret, super sensitive things.
Yeah, it's logical.
While your life is probably going to fall
find out
apart.
some bad shit. Yeah.
So he doesn't know this. And so they don't give him any information. So he freaks out. And so he starts telling his friends. And he's like, come with me. I'll show you the launch. I'm not lying.
People forget that.
Yes.
He went out and he showed people a craft that didn't look like any normal craft come up right when he said it would.
Yeah.
Over a base that wasn't even known then really well. And a sub-base, an area, not Area 51 proper. He's the luckiest motherfucker in the world. He did it 3 weekends in a row till he got caught.
Right.
So it's just like, man, every time you try to call bullshit on him, I tried so hard on so many things, motherfucker. People think I'm just some fucking believer. I'm not, bro.
The only thing that people have ever called bullshit on him is that he said he might have seen an actual alien. But he said he was walking down a hallway and looked through one of those little tiny windows that's in a door, those little tiny, like 12-inch square windows. And he peered in it quickly as he was walking by, and it seemed like there was a small thing that was sitting on a chair, and there's people standing over it. But he doesn't know if it was a doll. He doesn't know if it was... And so in his mind, he's like, fuck, did I see an alien? Like, what the fuck? But he can't go back. It's not... Like, everything's... If you work on top secret stuff, apparently, everything's very compartmentalized. Like the people that work on metallurgy don't have access to the people that work on propulsion, that don't have access to the people that, if there is a biological entity, that they examine it.
Which frustrated the fuck out of him, right?
Because he said that's not how you do science.
It's not how you do science.
Right. You have to collaborate.
He says, I wasn't the most qualified person to be there. Maybe
Right.
they hired me because they could easily dismiss me. He's like, why didn't we have better people on this? People that were more... So he was really frustrated. And he said to me, like, he thought it was a crime against the scientific community. If they have this stuff, like he says it was a crime. And, he talks about that thing through the window. He's so funny about it. I sat him down for long, many sessions, long, really trying to get it out of him.
Yeah.
He goes, Jeremy, I think they were just obsessed with measurements. I go, what do you mean? And he's like, well, look, there was something in a chair, but it was small. Maybe they were trying to just measure it to see if it would fit in a craft. So that's how he kind of gets around, like, did he see something or not? He doesn't know.
Like it could have been a doll that they constructed that was roughly the same height as these things were.
He just doesn't want to go there, right?
And so these creatures that were in this vehicle, if there were creatures in this vehicle...
There were 3 seats.
Yeah, and he estimated they had to be how big?
Your typical, like, what you think of as like a little gray alien, man. 3-4 feet.
Right.
He said they looked like they were made for children.
The seats.
Yeah. And so, look, and every time I try to be like, dismiss Bob myself, there's something that creeps in my mind. I'm like, hold on. Like, I find out that he was telling the truth. Like, recently, I had it verified that, he did work at Area 51. Like, I know I had a guy, I found the guy after 30 years that he wouldn't talk with George, the guy that did his security clearance.
Mm-hmm.
I found him. I talked to him multiple times about this, and he did clearance for Bob for the test site. But even more recently, from people that have position to access that information. It was confirmed. I just want you to know he worked out there. Now, I have people that were out there that saw him on a Janet flight. Bob worked out there.
And a Janet flight is those unmarked planes that would leave from the Vegas airport and head into Area 51.
That's right. And you know, so here's the deal, man. Like, it's the cumulative evidence about Bob that I, you know, as a friend of his, like I have no reason to doubt him. And all the evidence tells me that it happened exactly like he said. And he's explaining it to the best of his ability. And to his own detriment, actually, before coming on your show, man, he's probably the most hated dude. For some reason, people go crazy about him. They either love him or hate him.
Well, I think your documentary turned a lot of people's opinions about him as well.
Thank you, brother.
But then having him on, I mean, some people still call bullshit. They think like his migraines were convenient.
Oh, come
on.
That, you saw
But he was having them. He was having them in the green room before we started going on. He was very nervous about doing it.
Of course, man. He'd been beat up his whole life about this shit. Also, I gave him McDonald's before, and I think his wife was super pissed at me, and I was like, you give him a salad. No, he gets really, like, crushing migraines, but, you know, people that are going to call bullshit on that, we're talking about fucking UFOs. If you're going to call bullshit on a migraine, what are you even listening for?
I didn't feel like it was bullshit.
It wasn't
I felt like the whole thing was, it was uncomfortable for him, for sure. But it didn't seem like he was lying. But, you know, look, there's some people that are really good at liars. But usually when you're really good at lying, you lie about a lot of stuff.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's a consistency in people's lives. And the deeper I got in, chilling with his mom, chilling with his family, chilling with friends that have known him forever, new friends, every single person. And he doesn't talk to him about UFOs, by the way. Like all that. He never talks about that. Just normal life situations.
Right.
The one thing they all said to me, Bob wouldn't waste his fucking time with making up a story, and he'd probably make up a better one. That in the rest, he would. And Bob always says that. He goes, "Man, I wish I could fill the voids for people." He goes, "It's a horrible fucking story, but it happens to be what happened."
Right.
If I was making one up, he goes, "Man, I got some other cool ideas." Like, you know what I mean?
Right. Of course. And also, it's like if you're a liar, you generally lie a lot. Like liars don't just lie one time in their life, and then you catch them. They're inconsistent. Like he was lying long before there was an internet. I mean, excuse me, he was telling the story long before there was an internet. So if he was lying, like in the late '80s, like there would be inconsistencies in his story. Like he would forget how he said it. He would fuck something up, or
dude, for the research I did for the documentary, like I told him, you got to give me full access to your life, dude. Like boxes, whatever. Don't open them. Let me get all your tapes, everything. Right. I was so shocked. Like people, if they're trying to hide something, they're real careful around you. You know, just that was not my experience. But here's my other thing: is like, do we have to believe any one single person to understand that this is
no?
Yeah, this is a real phenomenon.
No, but he's one of the more interesting cases because if he's telling the truth, that means that the government has been working on these things for decades and decades, and that they have gotten themselves in this pickle where they can't publicly disclose what they know and what they have access to because they've had all these people work on these things secretly, and they sort of have a long history of hiding information.
Right.